On May 2, 2014, an experienced Formula One engineer named Nigel Stepney died in a roadside incident in the UK, a death that would later be recorded with an open verdict. For years, that single line, open verdict, has fueled speculation and whispers, not because the sport owed the public an explanation, but because Stepney's name was already tied to something Formula One would rather file away and forget. He wasn't just another paddock veteran. He became the human face of the biggest espionage scandal the sport has ever seen, a chain reaction of stolen secrets, internal power struggles, courtroom battles, and punishments so severe they still haunt reputations today. And the craziest part is that Spyagte wasn't just one bad decision in 2007. It was the end result of pressure building for years, inside a team that was obsessed with winning and terrified of falling behind. To understand why Spyagte exploded the way it did, you have to go back to McLaren under Ron Dennis, a team that had already lived through the highs of domination and the lows of frustration. In the 1980s and early 90s, McLaren defined excellence, legendary drivers, relentless engineering, and a culture that treated performance like religion. But Formula One is never static, and McLaren's world shifted when rivals gained technical advantages and key partnerships changed. Williams rose with groundbreaking innovation, and McLaren's engine situation became a recurring headache. Mercedes would eventually arrive as a lifeline, and for a moment, it worked. McLaren climbed again, even winning championships in the late 90s. But the sport kept evolving, and soon Ferrari and Renault stepped into the spotlight, while McLaren found itself fighting to regain the aura it once had. When Adrian Newey left, it felt like the ground moved under Ron Dennis's feet, and the message inside the team became clear. If McLaren wanted to return to the top, it needed a car capable of winning immediately, and a driver lineup powerful enough to force the issue. So McLaren assembled what should have been an unstoppable pairing: Fernando Alonso, a proven two-time world champion, and Lewis Hamilton, a rookie with rare speed and enormous height. On paper, it was perfection. In reality, it was volatile. Alonso arrived expecting to be the clear number one, and Hamilton arrived driving like he didn't care about anyone's expectations. That tension matters because Spyagte wasn't only about technical documents, it was also about control. And control was something McLaren was losing inside its own garage. Meanwhile, at Ferrari, another pressure cooker was forming around Nigel Stepney, who had been part of the team through the Schumacher era and believed his contributions deserved more recognition and a bigger role. When Ferrari's famous leadership structure began to change and doors didn't open the way Stepney expected, he grew openly frustrated, hinting at wanting a new environment and feeling stuck. Ferrari responded by reshaping his position in a way that effectively distanced him from the front line. And from Stepney's perspective, it looked less like a promotion and more like being pushed aside. That's where the story takes a darker turn, because Stepney didn't just leave unhappy, he allegedly decided to make Ferrari pay. Sensitive technical information, hundreds of pages worth, was taken from Ferrari, material that would have been priceless to any rival. Drawings, reports, images, and details tied to the 2007 car. And then those documents ended up linked to Mike Coughlin, McLaren's chief designer, through an almost unbelievable chain of events that sounds like fiction until you remember this is Formula One, a world where tiny advantages are worth millions. The plan might have remained hidden if not for one mundane moment: a trip to a photocopy shop where the presence of Ferrari branding on page after page raised red flags. The employee handling the request didn't treat it like routine paperwork. He recognized what he was seeing, connected names, and quietly alerted Ferrari. In other words, the scandal didn't begin with a spy thriller. It began with someone noticing that something felt wrong and deciding to speak up. Once Ferrari knew, the sport couldn't pretend this was just gossip. Suddenly, it was lawyers, investigations, and the kind of public embarrassment that forces governing bodies to act. In the narrative that followed, Stepney and Coughlin became central figures, but the bigger question was always whether this stayed with individuals or whether it contaminated an entire team. McLaren maintained that Coughlin acted independently, but suspicion lingered. Could someone really hold that kind of information and keep it isolated in a Formula One environment where engineers collaborate and performance depends on details? The hearings escalated, and the penalties eventually landed like a wrecking ball. A record fine and disqualification from the Constructors' Championship. It was the kind of punishment designed not only to penalize wrongdoing, but to send a message to the entire paddock. Some lines, if crossed, would cost you everything. And then, like every great scandal, Spygate didn't stay neatly contained in courtrooms. It spilled into the driver narrative and turned McLaren's 2007 season into a drama that felt too chaotic to be real. Alonso and Hamilton weren't just competing, they were colliding. Two careers, two egos, two interpretations of what McLaren had promised them. The tension reached a point where team decisions were questioned, trust crumbled, and every moment was interpreted through suspicion. Incidents on track and in qualifying became symbols of something bigger, a team cracking under pressure. Behind the scenes, the scandal's second wave was triggered by what reportedly became a leverage play. Communications that gave the FIA new reasons to reopen the case and treat it as something broader than one employee's misconduct. Immunity deals, testimony, and internal chaos followed, and the result was a sporting earthquake. McLaren's competitive year continued on track, but its authority and stability behind the scenes were collapsing in real time. Even after the punishment, the fallout didn't simply end. Relationships between major partners were strained, reputations were damaged, and rivalries sharpened. The scandal became part of the background noise of the sport, something people referenced without always wanting to revisit the details. Stepney, meanwhile, became effectively radioactive in the world of F1, his name carrying consequences long after the hearings. Courts handled aspects of the case outside the FIA, and the message from the establishment was unmistakable. There would be no easy return to the paddock spotlight for someone associated with sabotage and industrial espionage. In the years that followed, McLaren would continue through ups and downs, Ferrari would carry on, and Formula One would move forward, because it always does. But Spygate had changed something permanent, the sense that behind the glamour, the sport could be ruthless in ways fans rarely see. And that's what makes this story linger. Spygate is remembered as an engineering scandal, but it's also a story about ambition, insecurity, and the human cost of a sport where winning is everything. It began long before 2007, in the pressure of maintaining dominance, in careers that didn't go the way people hoped, and in teams where loyalty could crack under frustration. It ended with punishments and public shame, but it also left unanswered questions, especially about motivation. What truly pushes someone to cross a line that can't be uncrossed? The uncomfortable truth is that we'll never fully know what was happening inside those rooms, and we don't need conspiracy to understand the core lesson. Formula One is built on speed and innovation, but it's also built on people, and when people feel cornered, underestimated, or desperate, the consequences can reshape the entire sport.